over the last decade, apartments have shrunk, I think, 10 to 5%. There has to be more creative solutions. Our apartments are getting smaller and we can't just live the way our parents live. Not that they own the Dyson vacuum cleaner, but we really need to understand how we're making this all work in cities, looking towards the next 30 years.
Welcome back to Building Blocks. I'm Yotam, the co-founder and CEO at Daisy. We have a saying at Daisy that a close neighbor is better than a distant relative. We believe that a building is more than just a property. It's a place where communities are formed, where you share space, decisions, you share the budget. We believe that there is much more to be done and to unlock within the building. What if we use this building ecosystem and enable people to share and to collaborate in other aspects? I'm thrilled to have Yael here, who is the co-founder of Tulu. So from here, I'll let Yael just share a bit more about Tulu and what they do and how they do this magic.
Yotam, I'm thrilled to be here and to partner with Daisy. I think Tulu and Daisy have so much in common. Tulu enables people to gain access to stuff they need in their daily lives right from their buildings. We work in 42 cities worldwide, and we give access to over 100,000 households where residents essentially can go downstairs, open the Tulu app, and rent whatever items they want. We have items that vary from cleaning appliances to DIY tools to lifestyle entertainment items, and we offer all this amazing curation to people in buildings. I think there's such an oversight to buildings, to the built environment, where we live, where we play, where we work. In our case, it's residential building and student housing, but essentially the city is where most progression happens outside of rural areas. And at the same time, buildings are contributing to about a third of carbon emissions, energy-related emissions, and there's so much opportunity. Prior to founding Tulu, I was an environmental activist and an urban planner. I went to MIT for an accelerator called DesignX. It's a program called Our Generation Speaks. It's for entrepreneurs, and that's where I met Ishai, my brilliant co-founder, who's an architect. And we were both the only two people with a really, really weird obsession for the built environment. Ishai's architecture skills and my excitement about minimalism and community made Tulu come into fruition. And essentially what we wanted to do is we wanted to reshape the way people use and consume stuff. And we wanted to do it in the best and most efficient place, which is where people live, and that's in buildings. And we had a really interesting approach to how can we leverage the fact that people are living so closely to one another and have such similar needs, and build an infrastructure inside the building that will enable them to get what they need on an hourly basis instead of having to own stuff.
So essentially, if I need a vacuum cleaner, instead of buying one for myself, I can go down to the Tulu amazing structure, and I can just rent it out for an hour, right?
Essentially how it works is if you live in a luxury residential building, a regular residential building, or a student housing, and you have Tulu in it, which today there's over 300 buildings with Tulu. We have access to 100,000 households. You download Tulu on your phone and you have a membership where you can essentially browse through all the items we offer. In some of our big cities like the UK, like London and New York, you can actually also get deliveries to your building. But you choose whatever item you see on demand in your building, you swipe it on the app, the door opens, you grab it, you use it for as long as you want, and you bring it back. There's a lot of technological aspects to it as well. The units are IoT-based, the items are being tracked, there's camera features, there's a GPT feature, there's a bunch of other things. But the very simple premise is that whatever you need on your daily life, like cleaning appliances, entertainment, items, DIY machines are available in your building.
Instead of buying.
Right?
If we have Tulu in our building, then we don't need to buy. For each unit, we can actually use those things together, right?
Yes. So there's a few ways we can look at it. I really like the term fractional ownership.
Okay.
And specifically Gen Zs and millennials, 80% of Gen Z and millennials already are inclining to buy renewed, refurbished, and recycled items. That's one thing. 50% of Gen Zs and millennials are inclined to rent stuff if they had the option to rent stuff. So we are building an infrastructure for that. But at the same time, we're rewriting a relationship that people have with their stuff. Instead of having to buy them, they rent it, and then brands are also able to collaborate with their end user in a more efficient way.
And I think it's the entire sharing economy that is happening, or from Uber to others. Like in the end, those companies are basically combining this buying power, right, of people that can buy things together, and then everybody wins for it. The price can be lower, right, and we also save, in this case, a lot in the planet.
Yes, and I think what really resonates with Daisy as well is that over the last decade, apartments have shrunk, I think, 10 to 5%. There has to be more creative solutions. Our apartments are getting smaller, and we can't just live the way our parents live. Not that they own the Dyson vacuum cleaner, but we really need to understand how we're making this all work in cities, looking towards the next 30 years. Like, what are going to be the services and technologies buildings integrate to make people deal with the fact that they don't have any space for anything?
Yeah, I think when we started Daisy, we also encountered this status quo, right? People were actually using the same type of property management. The way things have been done has been a sentence that I heard many, many times.
This is how things are done.
And I think you guys, very similarly, you had to really break the status quo, right? Because if I'm used to buying things for myself, right, and now I need to change my behavior, right? And how did you guys tackle that? How do you guys see that, evolving?
We're entrepreneurs, and I think that's part of the magic and the curse. We always see the future. And I really like the notion to live in the future. What future are we building and what future are we living in? And when we started Tulu, we had told investors, we had to tell investors, this is what the future will be like. And it took time. We started 6 years ago, and already today, some people had Tulu when they were 18, and now they're, 24. So for them too, this is, of course, my dorms have a PS5 I can rent. And of course, my residential buildings have a printer for me and a scooter for me and a Ben & Jerry ice cream when I'm, hungry at night. So it's really cool. We actually have cameras in our units, and we see reactions of people. And the initial reaction is like, oh my God, this is so cool. Now, I don't want this to be the initial reaction. I want this to be, of course my building is thinking about those services. But when we started and we had told investors we're coming to New York to build this, to scale here, they're like, no one's going to rent a vacuum cleaner in New York. We said, yes, they will. And then we launched our first building in New York, and people said, oh my God, you have these amazing brands. And then we realized, wow, people actually care about the brand and not just the need. But Tulu is essentially rewriting a relationship. And we're changing a paradigm. We're moving from the equation of I want something, therefore I buy it, into the equation of I need something, therefore I use it. Access over ownership. And we are saying that everything in your daily life can become a service, not a productized, owned item. And it needed imagination, and it also needed some iterations. When we started, we would send surveys to buildings, and I know you guys send a lot of surveys as well. We would tell the landlord, hey, before we launch, go ahead and send a survey to your residents and say, we're bringing you guys this new amenity. What items do you want to see in it? People said, we want a pasta maker. We want a bread maker, a sewing machine. We're like, wow, people are so cool. So we offered all these items. And then people would only rent, the cleaning appliances and the drills and the air mattress and the more boring items. So then we realized, just like in every UX, you have, the declared preferences and the revealed preferences. Okay, people may say they want a pasta maker, but
it's not what
it's not what they're using. So there was a lot of iterations and learnings. And now, 6 years into our scale, we have data and we have insights, and we can double down on what actually works and kind of make peace with what's not working.
You mentioned before about the type of goods that you understood that people are actually using, and you mentioned also deliveries, and I know you also have said ice cream. Like, how is this evolved? Like, how do you got to a place where you expanded to those type of products? How do you guys decide what to put there?
In my entrepreneurial journey, I realized that a lot of it is the unfolding of what you thought you would do initially, but we had to start somewhere. So sometimes people look at our shop feature and they're like, oh, when did you decide you want to do a shop? And then we actually wanted to do a shop since we started the company, but we realized we needed to start with the rental items. But deeper than that, we said we want to centralize the demand of people in buildings, and we want to do it with a physical and digital interface. The digital interface is the app, is the data, is everything we kind of enable, but the physical, has limitations. Mm-hmm. So not everything sells as much as we want it. Not everything makes sense. We have Tulu in rural areas. We have Tulu in student housing that don't have much around. And then we have Tulu in New York, where you can essentially go down to the bodega and grab a sandwich or grab a Diet Coke for a much cheaper cost than it would cost us to deliver it and maintain it and replace it. So there's localization that matters to us, and then there's opportunities. In high rises, where there's 500 units and more, we go wild. We have a set of stuff we offer. We'll offer everything there. If it's a boutique building with 50 units, we'll just go with our most minimal offering that makes sense for the set of people that are there. So we look at demographic, and then we look at the space and the localization. But the shop was always there because at the beginning, we realized that there is a very interesting meeting point that happens when we put Tulu, and people are like, oh, I don't just need to clean. I with a vacuum, I also want to clean my floor. So while I'm doing the job to be done is to clean my house, what else can I get from Tulu to support that need? So from a user design perspective, we really mapped out all the things to be done by our users, by our members. And we realized people, when they need to host, what their user experience would look like. When they need to clean, what would their user experience look like, and so forth. And our shop kind of became a supporting actor in that.
The reason I started Daisy with Nir was really very similar to what Tulu does. I used to live in an apartment building, and the thing I saw and the opportunity was that we actually shared things with our neighbors. We shared the internet, so we bought one internet and we actually saved cost.
Classic.
And we were kind of ordering things together to save the cost of the order. So it's actually how I came up with the idea for Daisy, that notion that a building is a community and people can actually work together for creating this win-win for everyone. And one of the things we emphasize at Daisy as well today is really this trust and the transparency and the connection within the buildings. Actually, we launched the groups feature, and I had the same skepticism in the beginning. I must say that, would people in New York actually interact with each other on the groups feature at Daisy? Would people want that? People kind of see New York as people that don't really like to interact with their neighbors, but actually is the most active and used feature in our app today. We have 40% of all the residents using the groups and joining the groups. We have messages from people sending to each other, I have a meal delivery, I'm going to be, upstate in the weekend if somebody wants to use it. And, it just makes everybody, happier and enjoy living together in the building. And I think you guys are doing something very, very similar.
Yeah, I think there's a really unfair bias about New Yorkers and people who live in big cities like London and Amsterdam and all the cities we're in, that they don't want to make friends and they don't want to have anything to do with their building. And it's not true. And I think it's easy to blame the end user on what they're not doing versus the infrastructure. So you guys are essentially building infrastructure to then enable, a spontaneous request and then also foster some community that's deeper than the buzzword community. It's okay, will you actually help me get my food delivered when I'm out of town? And we're doing a similar thing. And some people say, hey, I can just borrow this for free from my neighbor. Why do I need to pay an external startup that wants to make money on my back? And we want to foster that as well. I don't mind you renting a vacuum from Tulu and then renting a chair from your neighbor if that's available to you. We want to spark the option that you live in a building and you can either use Tulu or you can either ask your neighbor, because you may have met your neighbor next to the Tulu unit or at a Tulu party. Yes, of course. We just launched a really big building in New Jersey called
Congrats.
Journal Squared. Thank you. And the owner of the building came to see Tulu, and no one knew it was the owner of the building. So he asked one of the residents that were just by the unit, what is this? And he's like, hey, I'll show you how to use it. So the owner got a tutorial from a resident on how to use Tulu.
And how do you see that evolve, I don't know, in the next 5 years? Like what people will use in the future in Tulu?
A while back, I did the Charlie Munger question. I did a reverse engineer to, what would make Tulu die? What would make the company be not relevant? So I was like, if there was an apartment that cleaned itself and cooked, like, if you moved to an apartment and it had all these things already pre-built in it, people would not need. Or if there's a robot that can do it all for you, maybe they won't need Tulu. That may happen. I understand, like, the day and age we're in, everything is changing fast, and we're changing with it. We're developing technologies, and I think I'd love for Tulu to become an app that really makes it easy for you in every city you're in to use stuff versus own stuff. And to be able to go on your phone and realize that you have a trip, you can use stuff with Tulu. You want to clean, you can use stuff with Tulu, but it's a greater selection of offering, and you can do it really easily from everywhere. So it's sort of like a wallet or an enabler to use stuff.
And looking from, I would say, the decision maker, right? If you look at rental units, it's the landlord. In condo and co-ops, it's the board that needs to make a decision, right? They have space in the building, and now they need to allocate this space for Tulu, right?
Yeah.
To use. What are the reasons that they make the decision to put Tulu in their building? What is the benefits they're getting from adding it?
Most landlords today have values, and I'll expand on that. I think, today landlords are trying to attract the best residents, and residents are looking for more than just 4 walls. They're looking for supporting services, for financial benefits as well. You pay so much for rent in big cities, so you're looking for a lounge in your building, and you're looking for a lovely concierge team, and you're looking for all these other perks and benefits. When I speak to clients, there's a few things I keep hearing. A, it's a great leasing tool, because when people tour buildings, they're looking for these added services. B, it's an actual affordable service for residents. It helps people pay less upfront fee on things. And today, Gen Zs and millennials, they need those fractional ownership services because they don't have the down payment many times. And we'll see many prop tech companies that are actually tackling this side. And adventure and experiences, experiences over things. I think some landlords understand that this is what people are seeking. Statistics show it too, and we can bring it to them. And lastly, I'll say that to me, true sustainability is not looking at the new developments, but it's building on existing infrastructure. And it's very hard for a building to add new things when it's already built. And with Tulu, we just need a socket and a wall. So it's we don't even need a room. We need a wall. And you know how many free walls there are. There really is enough space for Tulu almost in every building I've ever toured. So we made it easy for people. We made it elegant. We made it very efficient. So now the landlords that see the value, we build a partnership with them to match what they're looking for.
And when you think about, I would say, like, overall, you're competing with the consumption of I don't know, of Amazon. I don't know, one of the things here that
Exactly.
you click a button and I can order anything I want, then to get it in like an hour, and you're competing with this very big giant, I would say, pushing us to buy more and more things.
I don't know if the word competition is the word that I'm using on a day-to-day basis when we're building Tulu, but we're building an additional or an alternative kind of method. Some stuff you're going to want to buy, and we want to make the stuff that you can rent and you can see yourself accessing so convenient, so easy. And you mentioned the word trust. We talk about trust a lot because with Tulu, one bad experience, the one time you need us and we can't provide you what you want, it's very easy for the person to say, okay, I'm not using this company, like this brand anymore. So we had to really break down what that means. So if we want to deliver a 5-star experience every time somebody rents something so they don't eventually go and buy the thing, we need to make our operations very seamless. We need to gather the right data. We need to make user accountability features. So that the compelling argument to use Tulu versus to buy on Amazon makes sense.
I would use Tulu if I had it.
Me too. Me too.
Maybe just last question. Like we talked a lot about the future, and what do you think makes like or will make an amazing building to live in? Like what, as a person that lives in buildings, like what would you imagine a building to be to be?
I think there's two ways to answer that from my personal experience, and then with my vision for Tulu. We spoke about how fast technology changes and how slow urban infrastructure changes, and it has to change faster. And buildings, differently than governments and cities, can do that because buildings are private entities many times, and that's part of the magic. And startups can disrupt, and buildings are the beneficiary of technology. During COVID, we saw all these incredible services that were offered in buildings. So I think what could make a really amazing building is a sense that someone listens to you. I think that's like on the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Like if your water breaks down and if your trash stinks and no one collects it, that like these are the things I think like my friends and I, we want to make sure somebody listens to our complaints and that you are safe and that then you can trust your neighbors to help you out. So this is, I think, the honest answer is that you want to live somewhere where you feel like those things are taken care of. Then you want to have access to things that make your life easier. If it's a shuttle service because you live far away from the train, if it's a recycling system that makes it easier for you to handle your trash, if it's an intercom system, I don't know, but it's a building that actually speaks with you, that matches your need, that is quickly to adjust and learn, that you feel like there's someone behind the phone line. It can be a bot, right? But that there's actually somebody that engages with you. And I'm very hopeful because of companies like Daisy's and because of company like Tulu that we wake up every morning and that's the question we ask, like how can we make the living experience better for people in cities? And landlords and other stakeholders just need to accept and receive and work with us.
Great, it was amazing, and I couldn't agree more. I think building that infrastructure that changes building forever, I think is something that both of us are doing. And so I really want to thank you for coming and for sharing all the story of Tulu. And I want to see more Tulu in Daisy Run buildings, and we'll get it out there.
Yes, me too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.